Hello, and welcome to episode 28 of Uncovering the Corners of the World podcast. I'm your host, Karina Kasmala, using research and my personal experiences where I actually set foot in some of these places. I'll be describing some of the unknown attractions in both the US and around the world. This week we are traveling to Pennsylvania, located in the mid-Atlantic region of the United States, nested between New York, Ohio, Maryland, New Jersey, Delaware, West Virginia, and Lake Erie. Pennsylvania became a state on December 12, 1787, and Philadelphia in Pennsylvania was once the nation's capital from 1790 until 1800. Our first attraction takes us to Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, to the home of Phil the Groundhog. Last week was a well-known holiday in the United States, known as Groundhog Day. There's even a 1993 movie titled Groundhog Day, starring Bill Murray. Groundhog Day, the official holiday, is celebrated on February 2nd in the town of Punxsutawney, where the groundhog, named Phil, is awakened by the Punxsutawney Groundhog Club to determine how long winter will last, whether it's 6 more weeks of winter or if spring will arrive earlier that year. The history of this tradition dates back to the 1880s, specifically to 1887, where the first group of people gathered around on the first Groundhog Day. The town of Punxsutawney has a German origin, where the Germans used a hedgehog to determine if spring will arrive earlier or if there will be more weeks of winter ahead. February 2nd was chosen by the Germans because it was the same day as Candlemas Day. When the Germans arrived to Punxsutawney in 1887, since there were no hedgehogs, they used a groundhog instead, and named him Punxsutawney Phil, Shear of Shears, Sage of Sages, Prognosticator of Prognosticators, and Weather Prophet Extraordinary. At 1548 Woodland Avenue, EXT, Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, is the Gobbler's Knob Visitor Center, known as the weather capital of the world, where the annual ceremony takes place, and where you could also learn more about Phil the Groundhog. While in Punxsutawney, there's also the Weather Discovery Center, located at 210 North Finley Street in Punxsutawney. The Weather Discovery Center describes the history of the people who contributed to weather science and climatology, while also allowing visitors to learn more about different weather storms, like tornadoes, thunderstorms, in their interactive exhibits. Next, we drive to the Washington Crossing Historic Park in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, or specifically at One Tower Road, New Hope, Pennsylvania, to see a stone tower that holds a story of pirate treasure. The 125-foot tall tower is Bowman's Hill Tower, and when climbing to the top of the tower, whether it's taking the elevator or the spiral staircase, on a clear, bright day, can give you a 14-mile view of the land. The tower is made up of 2,400 tons of materials that include 517 tons of sand and 225 tons of cement. There's 2 stories that I found that talked about the history of the tower. The first story is that it was built between 1929 and 1931 as a way to honor, like a symbolic artifact, of what George Washington's army used as a lookout point in order to watch the enemy across the Delaware River. The other story tells the tale of buried treasure. Captain William Kidd was a pirate that sailed his ship in the 16th and 17th centuries. One of the people on Captain Kidd's ship was a man by the name John Bowman, who was a surgeon. John Bowman also owned the hill before the tower was built. Captain Kidd hunted ships, and his greatest success was the Armenian ship Quedagh Merchant in the Red Sea in 1698. When he captured the ship, he took the treasures and sailed the ship through the Caribbean, and found out he was wanted for piracy. He moved the treasure to another ship and sailed for New York to then surrender himself after he buried his treasures in unknown locations. He was on trial in London, and his crew did not stand in his defense. Captain Kidd was found guilty and was hung. The hunt for the treasure, though, began. The rumored locations were said to be New York, Connecticut, and Nova Scotia, of where Captain Kidd hid his treasure. But there was also the rumor that the gold was buried on Bowman's Hill, and the treasure hunters dug up the grave of John Bowman, but they weren't able to find any treasure. Our last stop takes us to a museum of the famous comedy group, the Three Stooges, a memorabilia of the world's first and largest museum located at 904 Sheba Lane, Amber, Pennsylvania. The Three Stooges was a comedy group composed of 3 members: Moe Howard, Curly Howard, and Larry Fine. Step inside the 10,000 square foot and 3-story building known as the Stoogeum, and you're transported to 1918. 100,000 pieces of the Stooges memorabilia, or Stoogeabilia, covers the building, along with the research library, 16 film storage vault with a theater that shows screenings of the comedy group. It's also known as the gathering headquarters of the Three Stooges fan club, known as one of the nation's oldest and largest fan clubs with 2,000 members worldwide. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. If you want to check out more information about Gobbler's Knob, be sure to visit Punxsutawney.org, their website. For more information about Bowman's Hill, read the article LAVO, The Legend of Pirate Booty Buried on Bowman's Hill, in the Intelligencer article, and check out the Washington Crossing Park website. Lastly, for more information about the Stoogeum Museum, visit the official website stoogeum.com. Have a great week.